Begin Self-Publishing, episode number 76. Rich Media Books with David Neal.
Interested in self-publishing but don't know where to start? Want to get your book onto Amazon? Want to hold your paperback book in your hands? Learn how on the Begin Self-Publishing podcast with your host, Tim Lewis.
On this week's show, I talked to somebody that I actually met via the Twitter chat that I mentioned on a previous show when we were talking to Madeline Sklar about Twitter chats. His name is David Neal, and he's one of the few people I know who is an appBook developer. So what this means is that he's developed a product which is more or less a video book, where there's a whole set of scenes that are animated from Alice in Wonderland. And I thought it would be interesting to have him on to talk about what are called rich media books. That is, books that have got more than just maybe pictures and words in them. I mean, I know a lot of people are probably put off by the fact of just adding pictures into their books, but it's also possible to add videos and extra bits of functionality, especially if you use something like iBook Author, which is an Apple product for creating these rich media books. But as you'll hear in the interview, there are issues with how to market this kind of book. And also the development is quite time consuming. So now over to the interview. Hello, David, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Tim. Good to talk to you again.
So today we're obviously talking about rich media books, which you've got quite a lot of experience of. If an author is interested in creating a book that contains richer media than just text and pictures, what are their options?
Well, the standard in ebooks is EPUB 3, which supports a lot more than you see in most current EPUB because it's not really supported very well. The other thing is iBooks, which would be for the iPad and the iPhone. Then you could go, sort of going a step further, you could go into the app world where you do programming for either the iOS or Android platforms. And then I also think you could use the open web. HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. You can do an awful lot there. It's not the same kind of world as book publishing because there's not a good way to monetize unless you have advertising or something like that.
So when we're talking on this sort of sliding scale, where would people create books if they wanted to say have something a bit more interactive? So if somebody has a choice, say, between doing this and seeing how the story unfolds, is that in the app world, or can that be done in like an EPUB?
Well, let's look at the iBooks because that's probably the easiest place for somebody to start. There's a tool that Apple provides called iBook Author, and with that you can plug in, video and audio and pictures and you can do hyperlinking and all kinds of things, and there's probably even some level of scripting in there. When you get into the EPUB world, the tools are more, there's different tools that you can use, including public domain things. There used to be a thing called Sigil, which has been folded into Calibre, which you can use to create, richer ebooks. If you get into the app world and you're talking about programming with something like the Apple's new Swift language, their older language was called Objective-C, or if you're in the Android world, you'd be doing it with Java. So you'd have to be, pretty much into the programming world to use any of those tools. The other thing would be the open web, which is probably, next to iBooks would be a place where you could use a tool. I use a Dreamweaver to do web development, which is part of the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite. I use all of the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite because that's how I do video and audio and Photoshop and all that kind of stuff. So, on a kind of moving scale, iBooks Author is probably the easiest. Whereas programming in Java or Objective-C or Swift is probably the most difficult for somebody who's primarily an author.
I've got a vague memory that with the iBooks Author product that Apple used for creating rich media books, that there's some restriction in terms of it can only be on Apple. Is that true? Is it some kind of like if you create the book, then it has to be only on the Apple platform, or am I just making that up?
Well, you have to sign a deal with Apple if you want to publish on their iBooks platform or in their app world. And with the iBooks part, you can sell it through Apple as an iBook. You cannot sell it anywhere else as an iBook. But the iBooks platform will also create a PDF file, and you can also take the iBook. It's called a .iBooks, which is as if it's essentially it's an EPUB 3 with enhancements. So, you can take that file and make it into a Mobi if you want, or a, KF8. And there's I don't think they restrict you from doing that. But you can't like go on your own platform and sell the iBooks version to download to an iPad or an iPhone, but you can give it away. That's sort of my understanding of it. I mean, there's a whole thing you have to sign, and you would have to look at that. Each person would have to look at that and see if they feel like signing it.
Okay, with your own Alice Winx, was that something you created with iBooks, or did you actually do the programming for that?
Both. Originally, what I created was an MP4, a video file, which is in vertical video format. It's 720 by 1280. So it's made to be shown on a tablet machine or a phone. And in fact, my initial thinking was the market for it would be the Kindle Fire product line. That's when the Kindle Fire came out is when I decided to make it. And so the first thing I did was make this video, which is 164 minutes of animation I used 12 early 20th century picture books, there were 198 color plates in these old picture books from the early part of color printing. Once I had the video, my goal was to distribute that as a video, but that was really hard because Apple said they wouldn't take it because of the format, and it's really impossible to get on Amazon as a video without a DVD, and this wouldn't fit on a DVD because of the aspect ratio. So I ended up making Android apps, and so that was sort of the second thing after the MP4 was Android apps, which were fairly easy to do. And I started on an iOS app, but Apple wouldn't accept it because one of the things in their app store is they say that you can't make an app that's just a movie or just a book, whatever just means. I mean, the wording in their contract is it can't be just a movie or just a book. And so when I sent it in, they said, well, it's just a movie. So what I had done was program it with subtitles, and you could kind of zoom, you could swipe left and right. So you could basically go through it really fast and watch the subtitles and stuff. Anyway, it had a little interactivity, but I even appealed their decision, and it went up to their next level, and they still said, no, it's just a movie. So they essentially, somebody in the Apple world, during this process said, well, why don't you try iBook Author, which they'd just come out with iBook Author version 2. This was in early 2013. And so the earlier, I had looked at iBook Author before, but it really wasn't sophisticated enough to do what I was trying to do. But the new iBook Author 2 was. So I was able to put that together as an iBook, and that came out in like May of 2013. I got a Kirkus starred review shortly thereafter because I sent it off to Kirkus is the organization in the U.S. that reviews books primarily for libraries, I think. But anyway, and then at the end of that year, they gave it one of the best ebooks of the year.
Yeah, so is it essentially still just a video though, or did you add in more features to it over time?
Well, what's in the iBook is the video is broken into each of the 12 chapters. And so the book, each chapter starts with a page, because it's an ebook-like thing. It starts with the page where the video is, and you can watch the video, and you can zoom it up to full screen. Then the next section of that chapter is all the original illustrations from the 12 artists that I have, and then there's the text. And the illustrations are all hyperlinked into the text, and they're also hyperlinked by the author. So it's basically you can look at the book, sort of you can watch it as a video, or you can look at each particular artist's illustrations, and you can link back and forth between the illustrations and the text. I call it sort of a video book, sort of like an audio book. It's a book with video.
Yeah, I mean, how long did it actually take you to create the book in iBooks Author? Let's say in terms of actual work to create all the videos and piece it all together, and actually the time to get it to work with iBook Author.
Okay, the video itself took 9 months, more or less from beginning to end. We have 22 voices on there, and there were three of us doing the animations. And, I did as much work as I possibly could, as anybody who's an independent knows. You do as much as you possibly can. So I did most of the voice editing and as much of the animation as I possibly could. But I hired two young ladies who were just out of film school in animation as character animators to help with walks and lip sync and movement and so forth. So that took about 9 months. The iBook went really fast because I was in a hurry. I really wanted to get it. It took me 9 more months from the time I finished the video until the iBook was done. But that was mostly trying to get it through Apple as an app, which failed once I really got to the iBook, which was in early 2013. It was out in May of 2013, so it only took a few weeks actually to do the work.
Okay, so were there any special challenges that you discovered in terms of trying to market the book? I mean, is a rich media book easier or harder to market than a normal ebook, in your opinion?
Seems like it's almost impossible. It was very hard. I hired a marketing firm. I also hired a firm that was a blogger aggregator. So I had 40 mom bloggers do write-ups about it. And, we pushed really hard through the Christmas season of 2013, and it was a total flop. I mean, we just couldn't get anybody to buy it. We got a little bit of traction we had some kind of contests and things on the bloggers. So if the bloggers, if somebody, clicked in and made a comment on the blogs, they would get a free copy. And so I think we gave maybe 200 copies away that way. But basically after that, the sales have just been really, really nothing to speak of. Since that time, I did for one Christmas, I did advertising in the New York Times electronic version in their book section. And I also did, the next Christmas, I did Facebook and Twitter. Of all of those, and you probably relate to this, Facebook was probably the best, but even then it wasn't very good.
Yeah, so have you found that of the sales you have made, which haven't been huge from the sounds of things, were they more for the Android app, if that's still going, or were they for the iBook version?
The iBook version, that's the one we pushed the hardest. For example, on Android, it's in both the Amazon Android App Store and the Google one. The Google one has the whole video, 164 minutes long, start to finish. In the Amazon one, it's the 12 chapters, and chapter 4 is given away, and I've given away 250 copies. So I don't know how many, because Apple doesn't tell you hardly anything. So I don't know how many copies of the demo, which includes chapter 4, have been given away. But we've sold a few hundred on iBooks as well. iBooks was not, when it first came out, you had to download the iBooks app before you could download any iBooks. They changed that in about, I think it was version 8, where the iBooks was built in and you didn't have to download the app. Whether that helped or not, I don't know, but it certainly didn't help to have it not be downloadable. It's not just me. nobody has had a whole lot of luck with these kind of things. Probably the most prolific and best maker of rich media things, especially for adults, not kid stuff. I mean, mine sort of, Alice in Wonderland is both for adults and children. It's not a kid story. But the premier maker was a company called Touch Press, which made a number of things. They worked with Disney on a thing called Disney Animated. They worked with Ian Pears on a thing called Arcadia. They did something called The Wasteland of T.S. Eliot, where they, it did the poem and deconstructed it and had 2 or 3 readings of it, some video, some audio. Anyway, they've done a lot of things. And I just saw just recently that they've rebanded themselves. They basically got out of the business about a year ago and decided to focus on music, because they've done a lot of music things as well. Some Mozart work, and a thing called The Orchestra, where they showed you all the pieces of the orchestra and stuff. It's that would be more like a middle school or junior high level book. And, I think that they were successful. I mean, they didn't go bankrupt or anything, but you can't make a lot of money with these things because they're extremely difficult to produce and take a lot of people and a lot of time. If you're doing music, you have to have an orchestra and you have to pay all those people and you have to have video people and audio people and stuff. So, it's a lot like, probably more like making a TV show than making a movie, but it's still, just there's a ton of work and a ton of people involved. And, the market just has not appeared for this kind of stuff yet. If it ever will, who knows?
It might do. I mean, I kind of get the feeling the problem with certainly the iBook ones is that, it's hard enough to sell iBooks on Apple anyway, because they haven't really got much in the way of charts. And, do these rich media sort of books, do they appear in a different section in Apple, or are they just mixed up with all the other books? Is there a specific sort of rich media section?
No, it's just mixed up with everything else. And, I don't know how well you know the iBooks, but their categorization and search is awful. It's just total chaos. So yeah, you can't, it's almost impossible to find. I was looking for some of these because I was looking in particular for the Disney animated one, which was really nicely done because I couldn't remember how much I paid for it, and I couldn't find it. I just could not find it in there. I have it, and it's on my iBooks, but even though when I click on that, it just went into Never Neverland. So I think it may have there may have been some kind of problem because Touch Press forked off his business to somebody else. Who knows what their deal was with Disney. So I could not even find it, even though I know its name and I have it. I could not find it in the iTunes App Store.
I think you have just answered my next question, which was, what's the best example you've seen of one of these books, both in terms of essentially sales and also just technically and from a beauty point of view, what's the best sort of rich media book that you've seen?
Well, the one I would use as my example is something called the Animator's Survival Kit. It's by Richard Williams, who was the director of the Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was the first animated show that did live action and animation together. And, he's also been an animator for 40 years or something like that. The producer and publisher is Faber and Faber. It's an iOS app, which costs $34.95, but it's kind of like a must-have thing if you're an animator. I would suspect that you have either this. It's also available as a set of DVDs, and there's a text version, but it's totally interactive. You can step through the frame-by-frame process of animation. Plus you can see it in fast or slow motion. You can kind of swipe it back and forth so it goes fast or slow. So it's highly interactive. and it really, gets into the nitty-gritty. I told you I took 9 months to make the Alice Winx product. He took 9 months just to make the introductory video, which is a sequence of walk cycles of all different characters, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's probably 10 minutes long, maybe. So anyway, that's like my favorite example of this thing. It's an iOS-only app. As I said, Disney Animated was a good one. Another one that's really interesting, it's not very rich in media. It's more of a multi-path thing. Is a thing called Arcadia by Ian Pears. Have you ever heard of that one?
It sounds familiar, but no, not off the top of my head.
It's a multi-path, kind of you choose your path through the story, but the story is totally interlaced. So it's a network as opposed to a linear story, but any path through it is linear, of course. And it was also done by the Touch Press people, but it's currently, if you look at it on the App Store, it's something called Amphio Limited is the publisher. So they have taken some piece of Touch Press, and then Touch Press has gone back and merged with 2 or 3 other little companies and is back doing more of these rich media things. But anyway, the Arcadia is a really interesting multipath story. And then The Wasteland was the other one I talked about a little earlier. So those are some, those give you a wide flavor of books, rich media books for adults as opposed to kids stuff. The other thing to look at for children, of course, would be the Nosy Crow, which is also London-based. All these people are based in London except Disney for some reason. That's where it's really happening. Nobody in the States does much. But Nosy Crow does a lot of children's rich media apps. A lot of things for kids.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, from the sounds of things, it's more a case that the market at the moment for these kind of books is still forming, and it's all sounding a bit experimental. I've seen a few books, like I bought one, it's a marketing book, where the guy put a video at the front of every chapter. How, say if an author just had basically an ebook and they wanted to put a short video at the start of every chapter, how difficult would something like that be? Or would they have to use iBook Author, or could they use some other tool? And can people go a little bit rich media and have something that's not going to take them 9 months to do?
Yeah, Amazon says that they support rich media, and you said you downloaded a book with some. I haven't been back to. I know how to do that, and I've done it, but it didn't. It didn't totally work. So I would have to go back and you can definitely do it with iBook Author. And you should be able to do it with EPUB 3 and KF8. So I would say that the harder part, if you're not really a video person, is making the video. Once you've got it, you can probably get it into an Amazon book or iBooks. I haven't used the latest version of the Mobi creating tool, but basically all you do is you put the video in there and you put a video tag in the text, and it should show up. It's trivial as far as the HTML EPUB programming, but whether or not it works with a viewer is a crapshoot, except in Apple where they control it soup to nuts. So.
Yeah. So how hard is the iBook Author thing to actually use then for somebody who say just wanted to use Apple?
It's totally cut and paste. It's if you can use anything on the Mac, you have to. I don't think it's on the iPad itself yet. There's another program to create iBooks called Book Creator, which is on the iPad. But it's like most Mac things. It's cut and paste. It's pretty easy.
Sounds like if somebody wanted to do something very simple, they could, but they probably get lost in the iBook stores.
Yeah, exactly. The iBooks is not. Well, of course, Apple got slapped on the wrist for even doing books. So I think it's of all the things Apple does, it's probably the lowest priority, I would think.
That just about wraps up our discussion about rich media. How can people find out about you and Alice Winx and your various appBooks and apps?
Okay, the easiest thing if you want to see Alice Winx is just Google it, because it's a unique word that nobody else uses. So our search engine optimization is perfect. So just Google ALICEWINKS. It doesn't matter if it's one word or two, it knows it. And about me, probably the best place to find things about me is on Twitter. That's my primary place that I post things, but it'll point you to all my other things. My own homepage plus the Alice Winx homepage are both linked in my Twitter bio. So I'm Walrus Winx, WALRUSWINKS, one word, on Twitter. So @Walrus Winx.
Why didn't you go for Alice Winx on Twitter, just out of interest? Was that already gone?
Alice Winx is the name of a person, actually. There was a person named Alice Winx, and she had the Twitter handle for Alice Winx. So there is one called For Alice Winx, both on FOR Alice Winx, both on Facebook and on Twitter.
Okay, well, it's been very good to have you on the show today.
It was delightful talking to you, Tim. Look forward to seeing you again sometime next time I'm in London.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please stop by iTunes and rate and leave a review. This helps make the show more visible. For free resources, show notes, and other helpful content, join the community at beginselfpublishing.com.